And are we recording?
We are.
Looks like we've got 17 people and 18. We're holding at 18. So I think we're ready to start.
Okay. Great. Good afternoon. My name is Glenn Gardner. It is 4:35 p.m. Welcome to the January 14th, 2021 BAR small virtual meeting. Again, I'm Glenn Gardner. I will be chairing today's meeting, and additional board members present with us are Fillmore Wilson, Julia Martin, Bill Huey, and we'd like to welcome new board member Lindsay Van Slambrook. The city staff present are the BAR Small Administrator Kim Lavin and Preservation Planner Linda Bennett. And the order of today's meeting will be as follows. First of all, there will be an introduction, overview of each project by city staff to the board and to the public. Next, there will be a 10-minute applicant presentation allotment. Feel free to use as little or as much as the 10 minutes as you need. But every presenter should please clearly state his or her name for the record, and anyone affiliated with the project, being an owner, developer, designer, consultant, should speak during this time period as opposed to during the public comment period. After the applicant's presentation, we follow with public comment, at which time staff will call on pre-registered applicants to join. Please clearly state your name for the record as well. Following public comments, there will be city staff comments and recommendations. Then the applicant has a period of time to respond and or clarify anything as a result of the city staff comments. And finally, we wrap up with a board discussion and vote. At that point, the applicant's presentation and public comment period is closed. The applicant may only clarify information if asked or called on by the chair of the board. They can raise their hand through Zoom to ask to be called on, but otherwise there is only input and discussion amongst board members at that point. And for the record today, we have one item that has been removed from the agenda. It's either been deferred or withdrawn, and that's 5 Cedar Street. So if you were online for the 5 Cedar Street application, that may be heard at a different time. Finally, please limit your comments to architecture only. We are not allowed to discuss zoning, parking, traffic, lot coverage, flooding, and other non-architectural items that are out of our purview. With that, Kim, I guess we'll go to item number 2 on the agenda, since number 1, 5 Cedar Street, was deferred.
Thanks, Glenn. First, we have some protocols to go over real quickly. Staff will control the PowerPoint presentation. That includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with submittal requirements. Applicants simply need to ask staff to advance to the next slide during your presentation. Applicants, staff, and board members are required to give their name whenever speaking. Video and microphone has been disabled for all attendees. Attendees, not board members or staff, will only be given the capability to speak when they're called on during public comment period. Chat and the Q&A functions have been disabled. Public comment. The applicants and all team members and the public have been required to register, indicate the project they wish to comment on, and submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Just as in-person meetings, all applications heard today are part of a public meeting format. If you have registered and will speak during the public comment portion of the meeting, you'll need to state your name and address for the record. Those members of the public that have registered will be called on in order by project. Members of the public that speak are encouraged to remain in the meeting for the completion of the item that they've commented on. Staff will call the registered member of the public to speak for each project. Unregistered members of the public who raise their hand will not be called on. For the board members will be polled by the chair for comments and for their vote on a motion. Each member, when voting, should respond yay in favor or nay not in favor. The chairman shall reread the motion verbatim, and the board member making the motion should correct the chairman if he has not reread the motion accurately. If a board member needs to recuse, he will be temporarily removed from the meeting and placed back in the meeting at the end of the next agenda item. If the board needs to go into executive session, they will call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they are ready to return to the regular meeting. Staff will issue meeting results and staff comments and board motion they'll be posted onto the city website at www.charleston-sc.gov/BAR. And these proceedings are being recorded. On to number 2. Agenda item 2 is 23 Reed Street, requesting conceptual approval for new construction of a single-family residence, including additional floor-to-floor height. The project is in the East Side neighborhood. It's new construction in the Old City District. Here's an aerial image just to give you some context of where the project is on Reed Street between America and Drake on the south side of the street. It's an existing site photos, 2 new houses, well, 1 new house. And new houses across the street as well. Here's the 1902 to 1942 Sanborn map. And with this, I'll turn it over to the applicant, Mr. Clay Shackelford. Clay, you can unmute yourself when you're ready.
Hey, Kim, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Clay Shackelford, I'm the architect. I am here with Don Lindberg, who is the owner of the project.
Hello, Dawn Lindberg.
Sorry. There we go.
There we go.
Okay,
Sure.
do you want me to direct the slides? Yes, if you could forward one. So this is the site plan. This house is designed in a traditional manner to exemplify the Charleston single. So for the site, we do want to park under the house. The flood elevation in the neighborhood is such that we would be elevated a story anyway. So that's why we're both parking under the house as well as in the drive. We've also are doing a porch to the rear for the rear yard. If you could advance. This just shows the internal organization of the house. You know, it's very much a central stair hall with rooms flanking and then the kitchen at the rear. To the next. These are examples of the materials that we're proposing. We would do cementitious stucco over a concrete block with stucco coins to accentuate the corners, as well as keystones above the windows. There would be some brick at the base of the house, but the majority of the house would be stucco. There would also be a standing seam metal roof. The porch detailing, as well as the even soffit and gable detailing, would all be very traditional. And the proposed garage opening would be similar to the gates that are shown here. If you could advance to the next. This just shows you the elevation to the street and to the rear, as well as the internal section of the house. Whereas we are requesting additional height on the main level just to have a 12-foot ceiling. Next. This would be the side elevation with the Tuscan columns, turn baluster rail, traditional hipped dormers. Next. This is just the side of the house facing the neighbor, where we are the closest to the neighbor to provide some light but privacy to the house next door. The next slide. And then because we're departing a little bit from a traditional Charleston single where typically the roof is just over the main part of the house and then you have a parapet and a lower slope at the porch. I wanted to show these examples where the roof does encompass the entire house elsewhere in Charleston. And the next slide. This just shows you the streetscape where there is some new construction. Most of the new construction around us is 3.5 stories. They are not taking advantage of parking under, but you can see how they are elevated. Next slide. And then this is just the drawn street elevation. And that's it. Thank you.
And you're muted.
All right, thank you, Clay. Kim, is there any public comment for this application?
There is. We have Anna Catherine Carroll from Preservation Society. Anna, if you're ready, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Kim. I'm Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. While there are some really great design ideas at work here, and we really appreciate the research done to provide reference to Charleston's historic architectural styles, the Preservation Society feels this proposal warrants restudy. First, the parking plan is driving inappropriate height and proportions. The building is both taller and elongated as a result of the proposal to park underneath and beside the house. We encourage restudy of this plan and are not supportive of the request for additional floor-to-floor height, as avenues should be explored to decrease overall height to relate more sensitively to the scale of the streetscape. Further, this design employs overly traditional details for new construction and should be restudied to better relate to the neighborhood context and read of its time. Specifically, we feel that many of the details proposed, including 9/9 windows, intricate fan lights, coins, and keystones, are too traditional and high style for new construction in this particular context. And lastly, the east-facing piazza orientation is atypical of Charleston. While we understand the house next door adopts this form, this is not a design element that should be perpetuated. Thank you.
And we also have April Wood from Historic Charleston Foundation.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the request for conceptual approval for new construction of single-family residence, including additional floor-to-floor height. We applaud the applicant for their desire to invest the money to construct a high-quality house on Reed Street. We do believe, however, that some architectural adjustments are necessary before we can support conceptual approval. Overall, the proportions of the building need restudy. The front elevation appears to be overly narrow for the proposed height. Although the applicant has shown precedent examples of the gable extending over the piazza roof, it is more typical to see this architectural form in smaller and more vernacular architecture. High-style Charleston single houses with details such as coins, 9/9 windows, and jack arches generally have piazzas as a distinct architectural element with a separate roof. Additionally, the prominent chimney on the east elevation seems inconsistent with the architecture of the front building. We recommend deferral of this application so that the proportions can be restudied, perhaps with the thought of eliminating the piazza. Thank you.
I'm sorry. As that, may I have a comment? Am I allowed to comment from as an owner perspective?
Later.
And we have no letters.
And so if public comment is done, we'll move on to staff recommendation.
So just to reiterate for everyone, this project has vested rights in the 2.5 to 3.5 story height district. The proposal constitutes constitutes a 3.5-story house and is within its rights for a 3.5-story house. What they're asking the BAR for is an additional floor-to-floor height, which is set at 12 feet for residential, and they're requesting 13 feet 7, I believe, in order to have a 12-foot ceiling, as Mr. Shackelford has explained. It's important to note that in both ordinance versions, the BAR is empowered to require a downward adjustment of 1/2 story in the number of stories in immediate surroundings. So, just a couple comments. Various elements are in the zoning ordinance to ensure proper and traditional proportions for building design. One of these measures is the height to width ratio of 2:1 in order to keep vertical and urban street rhythm. The proposal has a height to width ratio that's out of scale with this requirement and should be adjusted. Adding a masonry bay at the front of the piazza screen and including it as part of the masonry facade could improve the exaggerated proportions. Please restudy. I have a couple examples of the houses. One of them is 135 St. Phillips Street. And then there's a more grand house at 1 Meeting Street where the front facade carries across the piazza. Staff don't support the additional height request, and there are no extenuating circumstances that would justify the request. Additionally, the reduction of height would help mitigate the proportion imbalance. Disengage the rear 3rd-story roof massing from the roof line in order to read the full piazza. The column orders are out of scale. The ground floor reads too thin, the 2nd floor too tall, and the 3rd floor is appropriate. This will improve with the reduction of the 2nd floor height. Reduce the front gable window to a 6-light single window. Eliminate the pediment on the west elevation. And finally, the garage door is inappropriate on the street. Garage doors on front elevations are prohibited as stated in the City of Charleston's design guidelines for elevating historic buildings, which also applies to new buildings. For these reasons, the staff recommends denial for height, scale, massing, and general architectural direction. Thank you.
Now is when Clay, you and the owner are welcome to ask questions or comment or kind of rebut the comments.
Okay. First of all, oops, am I on? Oh, this is Dawn Lindberg, the owner of 23 Reed Street, also the owner of 13 Elizabeth Street, in which we provided evidence of the roof lines that go on. Second of all, my daughter is also here, Noelle, who will also be living here. And one of the reasons why we're looking for a garage door is to be deemed almost like a carriage and are in architecturally similar to many houses in the area. And it's for safety reasons. So specifically, she's an 11-year-old child that will be living in that house as well. And we need to make sure that we have the appropriate access for her and for the appropriate private parking in the house. So it's a safety issue. And we were requesting that the city re-examine that. And I have also lived in 11 and 13 Elizabeth Street, and both houses next to me for 20 years have streets that enter. They were built in 1997, 11 and 9 Elizabeth Street. Both of those houses that I have lived next to for 20 years have entry from the street. I'm happy to provide examples of those for you. Matter of fact, 9 Elizabeth Street has 2 entries. And I lived next to that for 20 years. So I'm asking that you re-evaluate that I have had to live next to those houses for 20 years. Why are they allowed to do that? And I'm not allowed to, and I'm not allowed to park under my house.
Is that everything?
That's all I have.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on now to board discussion.
Glenn, I might have missed it. I'm not sure, but I had a question for the applicant.
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was just going to ask, I guess, the architect, what is the material palette? It's difficult to tell. I don't think it's called out.
It is cementitious stucco over concrete block with some limited amount of brick at the base.
Thank you.
Any other board questions before we go into discussion? Okay, sorry, Julia. So we'll now go into board discussion.
Okay. I don't mind starting. I'm pretty much in line with staff as well as the preservation groups. You know, given all the considerations, I think 12-foot floor-to-floor height is plenty in this location on the east side and its context. It will already exceed the average substantially. And I don't really see any compelling reason to raise the first floor, the finished floor, above the DFE. I think we've been pretty consistent in discouraging that. And as far as I can see from the drawings, this seems to take the first floor maybe a couple feet above what the city would require the finished floor to be at. And regarding the garage door on the front, it is, there's nothing new about the city and the BAR having a strong aversion to garage doors on the front. And I think if you wanted to consult the city's elevated design guidelines for elevated structures, I think it might give you some assistance in trying to mitigate the verticality of this design, which is pretty exaggerated. So I just had a couple of other comments. There seem to be sort of dueling aesthetics between the main volume of the house and the addition at the back, and it seems to maybe give some false sense of a historic original house and a modern new addition, which is a bit odd. And let's see, I think everything else I have here has already been said by the preservation groups or by staff, and they have some good comments, I thought.
I mean, this is Bill Huey. I would say that I agree with the comments of staff and the preservation groups as well. I just think that perhaps the height does need to be reduced. The proportions need to be scaled to be a little more appropriate with the streetscape. Also, there is, to Julia's point, a little bit of a mix of styles going on. I think perhaps high style elements, excuse me, the high style elements for new construction are a bit out of place. I believe that was a comment from one of the preservation groups. So potentially a simplification of some of the high style elements and reduction of the height and proportion, I believe would go a long way. That's all.
Fillmore Wilson here. I'm not going to restate what's already been stated. I tend to agree with all of it. I particularly agree that there's too much verticality in the design, and that while it mimics nicely a very high style single house, it abandons the proportions of a traditional single house. And so, and I am like the board in general and staff, I am opposed to the front facing garage doors.
Anyone else?
I can just go ahead and make a motion following staff's recommendation. Denial for height, scale, mass, and general architectural direction with all of staff's comments and a board comment to restudy the quote unquote addition. Restudy the false sense of addition.
Julia's made a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Fillmore Wilson. I will call on each member for their vote. Julia,
Yay in favor.
Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Lindsay,
Yay in favor.
Bill,
Yay in favor.
and the chair votes with the majority. So the motion passes.
Julia, just to make sure I got that right, denial for height, scale, and mass, and for general architectural direction with staff comments and board comment to restudy the false sense of addition.
Correct.
Next item is number 3, 357 Grove Street.
With that,
Okay, item number 3 is 357 Grove Street. They're requesting final approval for the removal of historic windows. It's a category 4 in the Wagner Terrace neighborhood, circa 1947, and in the historic materials demo district. Just to give you a little context, here's an aerial Grove Street between 6th and 5th Avenue on the south side. Here's some existing site photos. And this is looking east on Grove and looking west. It's just another perspective. And this is the survey card from 2005, showing conditions haven't changed. Here's the sandboard map from 1944 and the original porch, which was not enclosed in 1944. And if the applicant wants to take it from here, hold on one moment. There she is. And if you both want to unmute yourself when you're ready to speak.
Are we there?
Yes.
Hey there. There's some smiles. There's a lot going on here, you guys. Okay, so my presentation is a little rudimentary. I didn't realize I needed a PowerPoint, so my apologies. But I do have, did you put Jason Olson on, love, Kim?
I did.
Okay, so I'm not sure if his audio and visual is on.
He has the ability to unmute and show.
Okay. Okay, great. Good stuff. So I'm Jill Lynn Montgomery. I own 357 Grove Street. I've owned it for about 12 years now. I've done a number of things to improve the house. So I'm seeking to do an upgrade to the windows. So the windows are original. Most of them I can barely get up and down. The pulleys on a good deal of them are not operable, so it's not great for safety. I have had them reglazed and trying to improve the efficiency of it as well. But in the end, I researched and sought out some architectural windows that are wood and look almost identical. As far as the grid pattern, there's a slight change in that. And trying to think of what else I can tell you. But I just want to inform you of my street on Grove. So there's approximately 139 houses on Grove. And of those, there's 56 that have original single pane windows on my street. 83 of them have dual pane window replacement windows, and the majority of those are vinyl with either no grids or grids between the glass. And only a handful are architectural style similar to what I'm looking to install. So most of the windows that have been replaced are vinyl. So I wanted to make that point. And in addition to that, other things that the back window, the mudroom windows, and the windows inside the porch are not visible to the public. So, and it's really, yeah, I'm not sure which, yeah. So that's the front, and then the front porch is really all you can kind of see from the front of the street. And then the porch windows are not original and are dual pane already. So with that, I think if Jason can hop on here, he had an example to show you if he's available. Hello, Jason.
I am here. Thank you. I'm Jason Olson.
Oh, okay, great.
Salesman for Lowe's in the James Island store. And I have a sample of the window that we're proposing to put in this home. So I'm going to grab.
Jason, if I can stop you there, we don't have purview of what comes next. Our only question and purview is whether or not those windows can be removed.
So can you tell her about the window a little bit more, Jason, then?
It will not come into consideration.
I just wanted
The fact
to
that I'd be
relay
replaced.
it was
Oh,
an 850 series Pella Architect window, not vinyl, with actual architectural style grids. And again, it's right here if you guys want to see it.
So Jillian, do you have any other, I'm guessing that's probably the balance of your applicant presentation, right?
My apologies, it's not more elaborate.
No, you're fine. No, I just wanted to clarify
yeah.
if Jason can't share that, if he can't share the visual of that window, I just want to make sure. Are you okay if we move forward with any questions of you from the board?
Yeah. Oh, I did want to add that there is some wood rot here and there, especially in the front. But I do have, you can't see that, but here's, maybe you can see it, the Architecture Series window that I'm looking to install. And here is the crank for the kitchen and the bathroom.
Okay.
Or casement, I guess is the correct terminology for that window.
Okay.
So
what the board will have to decide is whether you are allowed to remove what is there, as opposed to really discussing what you want to replace them with. Is that right, Kim?
That's correct.
Okay. So fellow board members, are there any questions of the applicant? Okay. And Kim, do we have any public comment?
We do. We have Anna Catherine Carroll. Anna Catherine, if you'd like to unmute yourself when you're ready.
Okay, Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. Based on our review of the application materials, it was difficult to understand the scope of the proposed demolition and replacement. Based on the presentation, it appears that most, if not all, of the windows are up for removal. And it appears to us that the majority of the windows are in reparable condition. So we would ask that the board require the applicant to refine the scope of this request to reflect replacement of only windows that cannot be feasibly repaired, per the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. Thank you.
We also have April Wood.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. We've reviewed the application for demolition of the windows at 357 Grove Street. We are opposed to the request for the wholesale demolition of windows on this historic house. The wood windows are character defining features and should be repaired rather than replaced in accordance to the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. We recommend denial of the wholesale demolition of the historic windows of 357 Grove Street. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that concludes public comment. And so we'll move on to the city staff comments.
Sure, the main body of the house has original or near original wood windows that should be retained. The porch was enclosed and windows were added prior to the survey in 2005 and can be replaced as they are not original craftsmanship or era. We recommend final approval of demolition of porch enclosure windows and denial of demolition of house windows. Thank you.
And would the applicant like to give any feedback or comments on public or staff comments?
Well, I think I've probably stated my purpose of wanting to replace the windows. Honestly, I had no idea that my little house in Wagner Terrace was up to so many people to decide what I can do to improve the home and the safety and the efficiency. So I guess it's a little concerning for me that it's up to all of you to decide what I can do to my house that's in Wagner Terrace. But in the end, that's clearly the way that this goes. And I appreciate you listening and considering my project.
Thank you. On to
Thank you.
Board discussion.
Fillmore Wilson, I'll start. I'm in agreement with staff. Actually went by and from the street, looked at, sort of observed the windows that I could. And I think that the original windows are repairable. A lot of them seem to be actually in pretty sound condition without actually being able to see them up close from the street. They look as though they're in actually a pretty good condition and are repairable. The ones on the porch enclosure, I think, are in the worst condition, but I agree with staff that it's appropriate to replace those windows.
Lindsay Van Slambrook. I agree with staff that to the extent that those original windows can be rehabilitated and retained in keeping with rehabilitation standards, I think I'm in agreement with staff on that. And then any of the windows that are new and located on that porch, I would agree with removal of those. This is Julia Martin. I'm on the same page as you guys. I was just gonna mention a couple of things for the benefit of the applicant, who does seem like she cares about her house. And you know, I think if there are certain units that are truly beyond repair, you could coordinate with staff and decide which units those are, and I think it would be allowed to be replaced in kind. And then I live on Gordon Street, so I'm very familiar with the proliferation of sad vinyl windows around there, but I just want to let you know that most of that happened before the BAR purview rules changed, which was 3 years ago, something like that, Kim. And since that point, we've had purview over things like windows, because we all recognize that it was really sad that they were not protected at all, and that's kind of why things changed and why we're paying attention to them now. But yeah, I appreciate what you're doing, and your house really is very cute, and that's why we care.
Bill, anything from you?
No, I think it's been said. Thanks.
And I frankly on this one am completely on board with staff and with the other board members. I think the non-original infill windows certainly can be replaced, especially if they're in a poorer condition. And then as Julia said, the original windows, Jillian, you can even replace, you can work with someone to make an individual sash in a lot of cases if you have a sash that isn't working well or has rot beyond repair. And I think Kim can definitely guide you through that process.
I'll just say one last thing for the applicant's benefit. Fillmore on the board, who started this discussion, has a ton of experience doing this stuff, and we're not just making it up that they can be repaired. I mean, they really can. Within the right hands, they really can. So I'll make a motion for following staff's recommendation for final approval of demolition of porch enclosure windows and denial of demolition of house windows.
Julia's made a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Lindsay. All in favor of the motion? Or sorry, we have to call individually. So Julia.
Yay in favor.
Lindsay.
Yay in favor.
Bill.
Yay in favor.
Fillmore.
Yay in favor.
And the chair votes with the majority, so 5-0 in favor of the motion.
Okay, moving on to number 4. Item number 4 is 9 Marble Lane, requesting conceptual approval for modifications, including the enclosure of a terrace, wholesale stucco removal and replacement with artisan cementitious siding. The building isn't rated in the Radcliffe Borough neighborhood circa 2007 in the Old City District. Just to give you some context, here is the aerial. The house is on the west side of Marble Lane between Smith and Jasper, Morris and Marion. Here's a little perspective from Google. Some existing site photos. You can see the location of the balcony and infill. And there it is again. If you follow the arrow, you can see where the house is from Morris Street and from Marion Street. And turn it over to the applicant, Mr. David Rand. And Sean Mellon. You guys want to unmute when you're ready?
Yes, good afternoon. I trust you can hear me. My name is David Rand. I'm with Rick Bain, and I also have with me Sean Mellon, also with Rick Bain. As a little part of background, due to extensive water damage to this unit, and like the other units around it, we were called in to oversee the repairs of this particular unit. Also, as you can see by this rendering on the left of the slide, That's what we're proposing to go back with. We'll get to that as we go through the slides. I think we can skip 2 and 3. I think you covered the context pretty well, or the site plan. Here's additional photos of the facade. The one on the left is the facade facing Marvell Lane. On the ground floor where the garage is, it is stucco applied to CMU. On the first, second, and third levels, it's stucco applied to wood stud framing. There's no real damage, water damage, to the garage or the ground level, only the first, second, and third stories where the stucco is applied to the wood stud framing. Because stucco on wood framing can be problematic, we are looking to go back with a artisan cementitious lap siding to capture the aesthetic and traditional look of wood siding along with the deep shadow lines. Slide 5, please. Here it's very difficult to get the elevations because you can see all the units are packed in here tightly, but you see the north elevation and the back or west elevation on this particular slide. Slide 6, please. Here's the ground floor. We're not proposing to do anything other than, because there's no water damage, other than to refinish the and paint the ground level. Next slide. The other move for your consideration is we're looking to enclose the terrace. And on the left hand, you see the existing terrace. It's almost an unusable balcony. If you sit out there, you have to sit sideways if you can get a chair out there. The owners asked us to enclose that terrace, and you can see the concept on the right-hand side. And this move is intended to mirror the existing enclosure on the south side and other enclosures, as you'll see as we go through the textual photos. Next slide, please. This is the second story, and it shows the infill or enclosure of the terrace that goes up from the first floor through the second floor. And this may be clear as you look at some of the elevations coming up shortly. Next slide, slide 9. We're proposing going back with a standing seam metal roof on the new enclosure to match the existing standing seam metal roofs. Next slide, please. Here's a overview of the roof plan. You can see the one on the far right is the new roof that we're proposing. And if we can go to the elevations on slide 11. On the left, you have the existing elevation. And on the right, we presented our proposed elevation for your consideration. We feel the combination of enclosing the terrace along with the application of artisan lap siding really activates or enlivens the elevation. Next slide, please. Here you see the south elevation. We'll concentrate on the drawing on the right, which is what we're proposing. You see the existing enclosure, first story, second story, and then the one on the right is what we're proposing to add. We feel that this small move, this enclosure, dramatically improves the interior space, gives the illusion of multiple rooms off the one tower, while more down to earth provides a bathroom on the first floor, much needed bathroom on the first floor, and closet and storage space on the second floor. Next slide, please. Slide 13, no real change here. This is other than the application of the Otterson cementitious lap siding. Slide 14. From the north facade, you see the proposed bump on the left and the application of the lap siding 2 stories, 1, 2, and 3. Slide 15, please. These contextual photos attempt to show that the precedent for either lap siding or a 2-story enclosure or bump out are numerous throughout the planned unit development. Next slide, please. More surrounding context. This is actually across the street. The two pictures on the right are single unit dwellings, but it's in a row house arrangement. Where the ones on the other side of the street are basically detached single units. And the last slide, please. Here's the streetscape looking at the 9 Marbell Lane on the left and across the street, directly across the street on the right. And we're just showing that we're maintaining the same height, scale, and massing that's originally there. That's all I have for you this afternoon, unless you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, are there any questions of the applicant?
I just have one. This is Bill. I just have one quick question, kind of an information question. How old is this structure?
Early 2000s, I think.
Thank you.
If no others, Kim, do we have any public comment?
We don't have any public comment.
Okay. So on to city staff recommendation.
Thank you. The building should be differentiated from the surrounding neighbors as originally and successfully designed. To enclose the porch and add a 2nd story would duplicate designs of 2 of the neighbors, and this quirky porch and distinction would be lost. Although stucco is a preferred material, a shiplap siding with a smooth finish would be a suitable alternative. The staff is recommending denial for the enclosure and addition and approval for shiplap siding for staff comments and final review by staff. Thank you.
Thank you. And so if the applicant has any questions or comments about the staff recommendation?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. So we'll now go into board deliberation.
This is Bill. I guess I'll go ahead and lead off on this one. I do agree that replacement of the siding is warranted. The applicant's point that stucco on frame is undoubtedly problematic. And as far as staff's comments about the enclosure of the balcony area and then the addition of a 2nd level above that, I can see the point. I guess given the fact of context, I don't really have as much of an issue with it. It is obviously in the context of the entire area does say that it's more of a modern development. And I guess I'm not having as much of an issue with incorporation of this 2-story enclosure. I do believe, though, that it probably does need to be, if it is approved, potentially articulated in a slightly different way. Perhaps the spacing of the the siding or the siding material itself can be differentiated from the house body proper. But other than that, I'm generally okay with the idea that I'm seeing. Thank you.
This is Lindsay. I probably should have asked this question earlier, but Kim, you said that this it duplicates the design of 2 other houses. How many houses are in this PUD total?
That's a
I don't
good
know if Kim can answer this or the applicant. It just how many total are part of this?
Is that for the applicant to answer? Yeah, I'm not sure. There are duplicate units in this plan unit development, but I don't believe this one has a match.
Do you know how many units total are in? Is it 10 houses? How many total are part of this PUD? Do you know?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Lindsay, I'm going to guess it has to be. Just looking at the roofs. It can't be less than 24 or 25. But likely more.
Okay.
In total, it was the whole block that was part of the infill. So on this applicant's side of the park, as well as the opposite side of the park, it was all built together.
Okay. I tend to agree with Bill. Well, I guess first the easy part, I do think that the shiplap is an improvement. But then as far as this addition, I don't have as much of an issue with it. It does seem like an improvement. And I asked about the number of units just to sort of, get a ratio, see in the grand scheme of things, if the duplication would be obvious. I don't have a good suggestion, perhaps piggybacking on Bill's suggestion that if the design could change in some way so it doesn't duplicate the other 2 that are like this in the community, that's all I have.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in line with the other board members on this. I guess I'd like to make sure we're on the same page about the siding. I think what they've proposed is just artisan lap siding. I personally am okay with that, and I like Bill's notion of adjusting the exposure for the minor elements. But I think staff was suggesting shiplap. I don't know if any of you guys have any strong feelings one way or the other about that.
I guess my only question, Julia, would be, was Hardy product used when these were built? I don't know that it was.
No, it was saddled with this awful stucco on frame, which is why they're here now.
No, they're definitely not aging well.
No. It's a 13-year-old that's done some hard living.
I tend to be with the rest of the board members on this. I think the idea that one is, has a slightly different feel maybe than the other ones that have the 2-story bump out. I don't think it's a significant architectural issue for me. And stucco on frame is problematic and almost never done well. So it's certainly, I understand the necessity for it, and siding would be a more successful application there. So I think I'm in line with the rest of the board members.
All right, I'm going to make.
Can we get clarity on one thing? You brought up Julia, you brought up a very good point. Is staff recommending shiplap? Because that's not what we're proposing. We're proposing lap siding. And so just want to make sure we're clear on what we're proposing.
Yeah, I was going to make a motion for conceptual approval with final review by staff, thus implying that the lap siding is okay. And I'll add one board condition to differentiate the siding or siding exposure at the minor volumes.
Okay, so Julia has made a motion. Kim, do you have that motion?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Do we have a second to that motion?
This is Bill, I'll second.
Okay, so second by Bill. So I'll now call the roll, starting with Julia, who made the motion.
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yay in favor.
Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
Lindsay?
Yay in favor.
And again, the chair votes with the majority, 5-0 in favor of the motion as stated.
Thanks for everybody's time.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
And next item is 257 St. Phillips Street.
Okay. 257 St. Phillips Street is requesting conceptual approval for new construction of a single-family residence. It's in Canterbury, Elliott Borough, new construction, Old City District. And here is an aerial for some context. It's at the northern end of St. Phillips Street, almost to the corner of Line. And it's obviously an empty lot currently, so here are some existing site photos. And this is looking south on St. Philip and north. Sanborn maps from 1888 and 1902 to 1942 depict very different buildings. Previous motion was deferral with staff comments. The staff recommend, well, I don't need to go into all that. And if the applicant wants to take it from here, you can unmute yourself when you're ready.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Yes. Hi, I'm Ashley Jennings. I'm the architect on the project representing my client, Hunter Schimpf, and he's also in the meeting today in case he wants to add anything to my presentation. So you've seen this project before, I believe. Most of you have at least. And there was a deferral last time to restudy the overall floor-to-floor heights and to study the scale of the windows. Can you move on to the next slide, please? Once again, you can see the area that this property is in. It's a really eclectic in terms of the style and the scale of the architecture. Next slide, please. Here you can see the Sanborn maps, and our intent, once again, is to work with the original arrangement on the site, as the building that sat there previously were occupying the same place on the site, at least the original structure, which is the single house. Next slide, please. And here you can see a site plan. Of course, this is oriented differently than the Sanborn maps, and St. Phillips Street is down on the site plan. And the intent is to, you can see the red dash line once again, that is what we think was the original footprint of the single house that would occupy the site. We have a little bit more restriction now because of side yard setbacks and parking. So the house becomes a longer, skinnier structure. Next slide, please. Once again, site plan translates to floor plans, and as you can see, it's a single room wide all the way back. Next slide, please. And this is the proposal that we are presenting tonight. We took your comments to heart and studied the idea of lowering the floor-to-floor height, which we've done. We've taken about 1'2" out of the overall height of the structure. I know that doesn't sound like a whole heck of a lot, but when you start looking at floor-to-floor heights and looking at what we need to allow for structure these days to accommodate things like mechanical systems, we think that 1'2" is a good bet. The other comment that we had was about the scale of the windows. And unfortunately, the windows right now are scaled at 3 foot by 6 foot. And that's the minimum size we can get for egress for bedrooms. So scaling the windows down was not an opportunity for us unless we looked at something like a casement window. And I don't think it's appropriate on this type of house. Next slide, please. So a majority of the change in the overall appearance of the building really happens above the second floor windows, between the second floor windows and the eave of the structure, and then between the first and the second floor windows. It's changed the proportion a little bit. Next slide, please. And once again, you can see the relationship of the top of the window to the eave. Next slide. And this is the north elevation. Next slide. And you can see from the streetscape drawing that the building really is, even the eave height is lower than the two adjacent single houses or buildings that were traditionally a single house. You can see that our eave height is lower. Next slide, please. This is a comparison sheet, and I know it's hard to see the differentiation, but if you look closely, the previous proposed, you can see the exposure of siding above the second floor windows, and between the first and second floor windows has changed on the current proposed. And that's it. Any questions?
Board members, any questions of Ashley?
Let me just ask this one real quick. Kim, could you go back to the floor plans again? Ashley, do you have to use those front windows for egress? Do you have access to the porch?
We don't have to use them on the front of the house, but if you look, Julia, as you turn and go around the side of the house, those windows in those bedrooms have to meet egress. So, right. I mean, it would be a differentiation that would be pretty obvious if you had larger windows on the side of the house and smaller windows in the front of the house.
Anyone else? Kim, do we have any public comment?
We do not.
Then we will move on to city staff.
We just have a couple comments. The applicant followed the BAR directive and the proportions of the building have improved. Windows still seem large with shutters colliding. Not all windows need to meet egress. The porch might be utilized to have more of a traditional window size on the front. And lastly, add dimensions to the drawings in the future per submittal requirements. So for these reasons, we're recommending conceptual approval with staff comments and final review by staff. Thanks.
Thank you, Ashley. Do you have any questions about that?
No, I mean, I think if the board wanted to think about giving us some feedback on the shutters, that would be great on the front elevation. But I think that we would ask the staff and the board to consider the larger size windows just for simplicity. I think it would be awkward to have a different size window on the front of the house from the side of the house.
All right, so we'll now go into board discussion.
This is Bill. I guess I'll start. I do believe that Ashley has addressed the comments that we've made before. I guess the only point I would make would just to see if potentially the windows on the front facade can be made a little bit smaller, if egress can be accommodated off the porch. Other than that, I appreciate the effort, and I believe you've addressed my concerns at least. Thank you.
I agree. I still think this is a cute design, promising, and I appreciate the reduction in height. It does make a difference. And then I would just hope that the applicant could make sure that she's finding the absolute smallest egress window. I know we've had some that were egress compliant that weren't quite that big. And then maybe consider a slight adjustment of the width at the front, just so you can keep your shutters for color interest and not have them, you know, on top of each other, which seems like an odd condition to create from scratch. But yeah, I like this design. Oh, one last thing, when you come back, or if you go to final review by staff, I'm just curious to know how you're actually recessing that freeze board up below the eave. It just looks like it's depressed, like beyond where the framing would be. And I was just curious how that was working, but that's all I've got.
Anyone else? Okay. If not, does anybody want to start a motion?
I'll make a motion for conceptual approval with staff comments and final review by staff.
Julia's made a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Lindsay. Kim, I'm guessing you have the details of that motion.
I do. Thank you.
Okay. Julia,
Yay in favor.
Lindsay,
Yay in favor.
Bill,
Yay in favor.
Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
and the chair will vote along with the other board members in this highly divisive decision. So 5-0, the motion carries. Okay. And next up is 259 St. Phillips Street.
59 St. Phillips Street is requesting conceptual approval for the new construction of a single-family residence. It's right next door in the Canberra Elliott Borough neighborhood in the old city district. Once again, for your context, existing site photos. Here's an image of the full corner, looking west on Line Street and east. And Ashley, if you'd like to take it from here.
Once again, my name is Ashley Jennings. I'm an architect and I'm representing my client, Colin Colbert, who's also on the presentation tonight. Colin, if you want to add anything. Once again, we're in the same neighborhood, except this time we're on the corner. The corner lot is a little different because the shape is unique for Charleston. It's almost a complete square rather than a long skinny rectangle. And we had an opportunity here to be on the corner. We don't always get an opportunity to do a corner building, so we thought we would address it a little bit differently. Next slide, please. And here you can see the corner lot. Once again, it's an eclectic neighborhood. There's a lot of different styles here in the neighborhood. And we want to address the corner. Next slide, please. And you can see there was an existing structure that was modified over time that occupied the corner. Initially, what we had to do was go to BZA to get a variance for a lot of insufficient size. And the neighborhood association encouraged us to move the building into the north side yard setback and not maintain that 3-foot setback because it was a corner building. And we did that. And then we went through the process of getting a variance to allow the vision triangle to be obscured on that corner. And we were denied the variance. And so that's driven the design a little bit. Next slide, please. So, and you can see here in the existing site plan, the dashed line that indicates where that vision triangle needs to occur. And in response to that, we've created a loggia on the front of the building. And that really has driven the partie a little bit. As you can see, we have a columned area with an exterior space, and then the entrance to the structure sits further back. This is a single family residence. So the partie, if you can look at it, is similar in respect to a single house where the major portion of the building sits on the corner and a smaller subordinate section of the building sits closer to the south portion of the site. Next slide, please. And it manifests in a flipped plan where we have the living space on the third floor and a smaller living space on the ground floor to access the yard, and bedrooms on the middle floor. Next slide, please. So in thinking about the language of the structure, we thought that it might be nice to differentiate the two elements of the building, the one being closer to the corner being a brick structure, and the one being closer to the yard being a sided structure. And then we've proposed in that loggia arched openings with some wrought iron to create some privacy for the entrance to the residence. Next slide, please. And as you move around the building, this would be the south side of the building that faces the yard with a balcony overlook and some more glass on the first floor to connect to the yard. Next slide, please. This is the elevation that faces St. Phillips Street. So it's brick. Once again, we have an arch loggia with some wrought iron in it. And then on the rear portion of that structure, you have a walkout terrace so that upper floor has access to the outdoors as well. Next slide, please. Oh, is that it? Oh, no, there's the rear elevation. Thank you. And the rear elevation, obviously, this is the portion of the building that has more service functions. As you can see, that the back portion of that walkout becomes the area where the trash and the mechanical systems are tucked. And then the back portion of that other element is sided once again. And I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
So actually, I was going to ask, sorry, this is Julia. I was going to ask, I don't think it's called out on here what your floor to floor heights are. Could you just clarify that? Or maybe it is and I just missed it.
I think if you go back to these drawings, I don't know that I actually specifically called them out. I think we were thinking a 10-foot ceiling on the first floor. We've accommodated space for trusses on both the first and the second floor to accommodate mechanical systems because we have a flat or low slope roof on the top. But I think it's a 10-foot on the first floor and a 9-foot on the second floor. And then the top floor is a 10-foot as well.
Thank you. And then could you just maybe clarify your inspiration for the ironwork design?
Yeah, so the intent was to make it a more organic type of ironwork. This is something that's really conceptual right now. And the intent was to talk about it being an element that wasn't a traditional type of wrought iron, but in the same fashion of thinking about the way metalwork happens. It could be something that would be stylized and be specific to this project.
Any other questions? Do we have public comment?
We do not have any public comment.
Okay.
That means I'm up.
Staff comment. Yep.
The massing and volumes are overly complicated and should be simplified. They should relate and complement each other, specifically the north, east, and west elevations. The roof line colliding into the primary volume will cause awkward flashing detail. Expressive Ironwork calls for simplified walls. Restudy the massing of the east elevation. Volumetrically, it reads as 2 rocket houses. The height and scale is typical and appropriate for a street corner in a residential neighborhood. So staff recommends denial for general architectural direction and massing, and staff comments noted. Thank you.
Thank you. Ashley, do you have any questions about the staff comments?
I do. Denial for general architectural direction. I guess I would need a little bit more feedback from staff and from the board about specifically when you talk about architectural direction. Is it the materiality? Is it the, I don't know. I guess that would be my question.
Sure. I feel like there's too many competing ideas at work and that it should be simplified. And pulling out massing out of, height, scale, and mass to kind of, bring those volumes all back together.
If that's the only clarification, then we can move on to a board discussion.
Oh, quick, Kim, can you bring up I guess, one of the Elliott Street elevation?
Which one would you like?
That one. Thank you.
And I have a quick question. When she did the streetscape, is the house we just looked at would be right to the south of it, but it's not shown on the streetscape yet, right? Is that correct?
I can answer that. Yes, that's correct. We didn't show it because it hadn't been approved yet.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we can now, I think, begin board deliberation.
Okay, I will start. I mean, I honestly think it's a pretty clever, remix of a single family residence program, and that there's some admirably original design notions here. I'm not as bothered by the verticality of this one. Maybe it's because I'm still thinking about the other vertical application we looked at earlier. I feel like with some refinement, with some development, it could be pretty nice. I really do.
I'm gonna, I think, side with Julia on this. I think conceptually, this is an interesting and unique and I think attractive design. And I certainly lean towards the traditional, so this is unusual for me. But I really think this is an interesting design. I think detailing is really important. I think figuring out how the two masses are going to be differentiated with the siding is really important, and I'm not sure that's quite there. But conceptually, I like this design. I understand staff's concern about the way the smaller mass interacts with the larger mass roof, and that is a tricky detail. And they might need to be separated a little bit, but I think you can still wrap that and make it work. I think maybe a couple of inches to get the top of that roof line off the frieze of the larger mass would probably make that flashing a lot simpler.
Kim, can you flip the plans real quick? Yeah, this is Bill. I do believe there's an interesting mass study here going on, and I think there are a lot of positive things about it. I do think potentially a little bit, maybe more pronounced differentiation, and I'm thinking mainly the height of the, I guess would be the east element in conjunction with the main body. Might need to be studied to some degree. It's just sort of it's something I feel it's pretty close. I just can't quite put my finger on it. I think it might just be primarily a detailing issue and maybe a slight height adjustment on the portion that's reading more as a addition per se, being the difference between a brick mass and a sided mass. So I'm referring to the sided mass. Additionally, reading slightly more subordinate to the brick mass. The overall height, I see staff's comment that it's totally appropriate, I guess, in deference to the application we just reviewed, which brought down in height. I think it was successful. So these windows are just as big as the other one, actually, maybe a little bit bigger. So maybe it's okay. I just wanted to be to a point of consistency on what we were saying with that. But yeah, it's a little bit hard for me to make a concise comment about this, because I do believe the massing is, as far from a plan standpoint, is heading in a good direction. But I do believe some of the potential heights of volumes of the massing, especially on the sided portion, might need some refinement and adjustment in height and potentially in the interface of the details.
Anyone else?
And I guess if I was going to elaborate on that, if you go back to the elevation real quick, Kim, because I know that was kind of a vague statement, almost to the degree if, say, this sided element had what appeared to be more of a sort of a parapeted element that was subordinate to the fascia of the primary, something to that effect, in my mind, might read a little bit better. Maybe it's just simply the cornice sort of encompassing and overtaking the corner of the brick portion of the building right there. Perhaps if it was done more as a parapeted type of a roof that was totally subordinate to that corner of the building, something to that effect, I guess is what I'm getting at. Thank you.
I guess, Bill, if I might kind of pose a question to that, if that were to become a potential parapet, well, I guess that ceiling height would be affected, because you wouldn't want the height of that piece of the building to go higher to accommodate a parapet.
I guess what I'm thinking, Glenn, is there that you can see the facial line of the primary brick portion of the building. The parapet the top of the parapet might be at that line. So subordinate in height to the entire cornice of the brick portion of the building. So yes, the potentially the partial ceiling height adjustment of that sided portion of the building. That's just the way I'm seeing it. And I was saying the idea of the detailing, and I believe that's might be what's getting me, is the sort of extension of the fascia and the cornice, if you will, of the sided element sort of overtaking the corner of the brick. Whereas that wall is actually back in plane. So if it's more of like a parapet type wall, it could all read as subordinate to that cornice line and the primary mass.
All right, I'm gonna try to float a motion, see what happens. For conceptual approval with staff comments 2. Kim, I'm not sure I understand what your comment number 4 is about the doors being centered.
You probably are looking at the wrong. Here, hold on. There you go.
Oh, okay, my bad. All right, so let's just go with staff comment number 2 and board comment to refine the ironwork design. And the board comment to restudy differentiation of volumes and clarify details at intersection. Of volumes.
Julie, can I reread that?
Sure.
Conceptual approval with staff comment number 2 and board comment to refine ironwork design and board comment to restudy differentiation of volumes and clarify details at intersection of volumes.
Correct.
Do we have a second to that motion? Okay, so Lindsay has seconded Julia's motion, and so we'll call for a vote. Julia?
Yay in favor.
Lindsay?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yay in favor.
Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
And the chair votes with the majority again, so 5-0, motion carries.
Thanks, everyone.
And next up is 11 Gadsden Street.
(11 Gadsden Street is requesting preliminary approval for the elevation of house 5 feet 8 inches to meet FEMA requirements. It's not rated in the Charleston Village neighborhood circa 1941 in the old and historic district. Here's an aerial image for some context, almost at the corner of Gadsden and Wentworth. And some existing site photos. Looking north on Gadsden Street. And this is looking south on Gadsden Street. So previous motion for conceptual approval with staff comments. I can't really read those. Sorry. The board had several comments. Rear addition needs refinement. Appreciative of precedent, but stair is unsuccessful here. Consider incorporating brick detail into foundation. And another board member said front stair feels institutional instead of residential. And if Simmons wants to take it from here, Simmons, you can unmute when you are ready to speak.
Okay, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Yep. Okay, great. Lori Kramer, the one of the owners, is also on the line. You can see her, Kim, too. Okay, in case you have any questions for her. Okay, sorry, let me get just 1 second. Let me get my screen set up. So I'm trying to be efficient with everybody's time. There we go. Good evening, I'm Simmons Young here on behalf of Rob and Laurie Kramer, 11 Gadsden Street. Here to talk about a house lift and an addition at the rear. The sheet G100, G000 shows the view from Gadsden Street. Some notable changes: we have lowered it by a foot because of the city's allowance for existing buildings downtown, and we've designed the flood vents. That was a nice idea by the board to take cues from the design of the fence, which we did. We've moved to a metal rail for the stairs and removed the cheek walls and made the stair less massive. Sheet A100, we're just going to skip through to that one, I think. is a site plan. It shows the existing on the top and the new on the bottom. It shows the new stair going straight out as recommended by the city's guidelines, and we'll keep the existing wall on the street, the brick wall that shows up in photos. And there's some hardscaping that you see mixed in with pervious gravel and plantings. And then there's the new rear entrance stair as well. Sheet A101. Go forward, thank you. This is a drawing on the foundation piers at the back. The existing CMU building is going to be kept, and a new addition is proposed to be put on top of it, but not use those walls as load bearing. The next sheet, A102. The previous design and the new one in plan, what changed mostly was the windows in the elevated addition at the rear, which we'll see in elevation, and then the front stairs got more narrow and they lost their cheek walls. On sheet A103, this is a roof plan showing the height in between the addition and the main building, the existing house. On sheet 201, the existing house and the new raised one with the stucco base and the inset flood vents is shown, emulating a foundation of a historic house on Wentworth Street that we'll look at the end. We have the more narrow stair, and we're trying to make it more refined and less massive. And we'd welcome the board's input, particularly on the width, and we've been working with the staff too. We've studied it wider, as seen on the left, and then now it's at a width of 4'6". So I'd like to get your thoughts on that. At the rear of the house on sheet A202, there's some limited visibility from Wentworth Street of this elevation. We added some more traditional trim detailing, particularly at the roof. We changed the windows. We added an awning over the door, and you can see more detail on the back steps as well. In sheet A203A, well, this is sort of existing, middle, and proposed, and this is one more thing to talk about on the stairs. We studied bringing the stucco onto the stairs, sort of that base, you know, that 4-foot base of stucco, bring it onto the stairs beneath the brick band course. So we'd like to get your comments on that, comments and thoughts on that. And then we can move to sheet 204. It shows the back elevation. We're working on refining the detailing of the back addition, which we can go to the next sheet and look at the comparison. So we went with larger French casement windows and added shutters to make it a little bit more traditional. There's shutters on the front of this house. And let's see, that first floor face of building is recessed about 5 feet behind the columns, and it's out of view of the street for the most part from Gadsden. Our staff has asked us to reduce the number of window types, and we can work on that. I think we should break from the front of the house in window style, but would appreciate your feedback on that so we can get that nailed down. And then sheet A205, previously proposed in the new, mainly you can see that we're lower in height and we have a less massive stair, and the flood vents have some more definition. And then sheet 300, some building sections kind of showing how foundations work, and once we get the engineer in, we'll know how expensive those foundations are. And sheet 301, talks about what we're proposing to happen in the lift, which is to remove the veneer. We talked with Johnson House Movers, and he said that's by far the easiest thing to do and less expensive. So we've noted salvage the brick veneer as possible and mix in new. It's mainly a move to divert material from the landfill more than a nod to this historic, it's not really historic brick. So I've got, I can't really see myself. Oh, can y'all see me?
No. Oh,
Sorry
yeah.
about that. Gosh, well, sorry about that. Anyway, I've got a brick
Yeah,
that
Simmons.
sort of I think matches pretty well. But we can get that approved more. If you all think that's a good way to go, we can do that in much more detailed fashion with a mock-up on site. The windows are different. In the section we're talking about repairing any rot that we see and replacing them. Sorry, not replacing them, keeping the historic windows, repairing them and putting them back in if we have to pull them out, which we won't really know too much until we pull things off and poke around a bit. Sheet A302, we are proposing to put the concrete porch back. Again, talking with the house mover, his recommendation was to take the front porch off, which I think is reasonable, and we would just rebuild it with the same details. We could save some trim and the railings and the columns as well. And sheet I-101, sorry, A3, some more details, yeah. So this is a couple examples we found around, whoops. Yeah, that's a view of, I-101 is a view of the back of the house. The pink at the bottom, or salmon color. And then I-102, or 103, sorry, yeah, that's fine. Is some stucco base with brick above. These are historic houses in Anson Borough and one in Halston Village. Metal rail and wooden rail, which we're proposing for this house, is on the upper right-hand side. And then the brick vent thing I was talking about is on the lower right-hand side at Wentworth and St. Phillips. And I think the next sheet I-104 is a comparison of a brick base versus a stucco base. There are, lots of reasons I like the stucco base, but one of them is that there wouldn't be a cavity, and I think direct applied to a 12-inch CMU block would be nice, especially knowing that there'll be salt water coming up through here. And with that, I'll open it to any questions that you have.
I just have one. This is Julia. So did you say the plan is to remove all the brick veneer from the structure before you elevate it? Is that what you were saying?
That's right. And the house mover, Ernie Johnson, that we talked to, said, it's possible that you can, well, it's definitely possible to do it, lifting all the brick and putting angles around it, but the expense, he says, in the neighborhood of 3 times as much. And when you put it back down, the brick veneer is not always happy.
I hear you. Thank you.
This is Bill. One question, Simmons, is this designed to the upcoming DFE or the current DFE?
The upcoming, which I hope is in 6 days, but I'm not sure positive.
Thank you.
15 days.
Is that okay? It's the end of the month.
Glenn, you're muted.
Sorry. If there are no other board questions, Kim, do we have any public comment?
Yes, Anna Catherine Carroll.
Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. In keeping with our previous comments, the Preservation Society continues to feel that the proposed stair configuration creates a condition that makes the stair appear overly massive. While there are notable improvements to this iteration of the design, in lieu of extending outward, we would encourage study of turning the stair to descend along the face of the porch before turning to face the street. Thank you.
That's all for spoken comment. We do have a letter. Glenn, if you'd like to read that.
Apologies, I have not dived back into that.
It's a lot to juggle.
So Kim, I still am unable to open that.
Okay.
file. And I
Okay.
apologize.
No, that's okay. I can read it.
Yeah, if the chair may ask staff to read that letter, I can't get it open.
Certainly. The letter is from Susan Lyons at 7 Gadsden Street, and she writes, I would like to urge the board to approve the application for conceptual approval to raise the house at 11 Gadsden Street at your January 14th meeting. I live 2 houses away at 7 Gadsden Street, and I've witnessed several flood events that have inundated the property of the applicant, Lori Kramer. She has been meticulous about rehabilitating the areas of her house that have flooded repeatedly. To date, there has been no flood mitigation in the city that is expected to reduce the likelihood that her home will again be flooded. Accordingly, her willingness to maintain the integrity of her home should be appreciated. I have seen her plans and heartily approve. Please vote to approve. Susan Lyons.
Thank you, Kim.
And that's all we have.
And staff comments.
Just a couple. The rear addition expression has improved, although the fenestration would benefit from simplification and restudy of proportions. The detailing on the front stair is one of the elements that will make this design successful or not. The stair should be widened to the full bay. And the precedent examples of foundation work is helpful. We appreciate the extra research. The staff's recommending preliminary approval with staff comments and final review by staff. Thanks.
Thank you. Simmons, do you have any comments or feedback as a result of those comments thus far?
You're muted, Simmons.
Sorry. This is metal and wood. It's wider. It does a little return. I think something like that would be nice. If you all want us to go the full bay, we can do that. I think we're trying to follow the city's guidelines in most cases. I know the stucco base is a bit different, but the stair straight out, we think everybody studied it pretty hard, and we've been through this thing with the stair before, and hoping to avoid it being the complete hang up. I understand it's very important, but I feel like if we're following the guidelines, we should be headed in a good direction. Thank you.
Thank you. So to board discussion.
All right, this is Julia. I appreciate the applicant including those precedent images of the stucco base, and personally, I am comfortable with that notion. I think it sort of makes sense. It's a clear delineation. It is, as we now see, precedented, and I like it. And I do appreciate the punched brick openings. I think that will look really nice there. And in line with what staff said, I feel like just taking those cheek walls away really made a big difference in the mass of the stair, and keeping them that full width to me would be preferable than narrowing them. And I hear Preservation Society. I was thinking about that, just looking at the site plan. In my estimation, trying to maintain the existing pedestrian access configuration and also preserving the existing site wall and its opening location seem to justify the straight run of the stair. So that's really all I've got.
This is Bill. I would say that I agree with staff's comments as well. I do think that just as a point of clarification, in my mind, when the full bay width is discussed, I would think that would be at least to the inside edge of the columns. I do like to see that little bit of a corner return at the end of the porch, because the stairs themselves are going to be all brick. Also, a little bit of concern about potentially that roll lock detail, or not roll lock, but the band detail that's continuing out onto the landing, because I would imagine these being all brick stairs, there's probably going to be a roll lock tread detail. So how that might transition to this band. might be a little bit of an issue. I just assume, would think that it's fine if the stair is just a proper brick constructed stair with no roll-up treads. But other than that, I do agree with staff's comments and recommendation.
Anyone else? Can entertain a motion when someone is ready.
This is Bill. I'll go ahead. I'll make a motion for preliminary approval with staff's comments and final review by staff.
Bill, you've made a motion for preliminary approval with staff comments and final review by staff. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Julia has seconded, so we will now put it to a vote. Bill?
Yay in favor.
Julia?
Yay in favor.
Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
And Lindsay?
Yay in favor.
Hearing those 4 votes, the chair votes along with the majority for 5-0 for the motion to carry.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next up will be 182 Trad Street.
Agenda item number 8, 182 Trad Street is requesting conceptual approval for modifications to the rear, including the installation of a deck with shed roof, double glass doors with glass around, chimney and stairs. The building's a category 4 in the Charlestown neighborhood, circa 1920 in the old and historic district. Here's an aerial for your context. It's at the intersection of Ashley, Gibbs, and Trad Street. And some existing photos. Here's that major intersection. Looking up Ashley. Here's an image of the rear. There is a major tree and bush there. But this is the sidewalk. And just historic images, courtesy of Historic Charleston Foundation. Sanborn map from 1944. And with that, if the applicant wants to take it away, you can unmute yourself when you're ready.
Hey, can y'all hear me now? Sorry about that. So we'd be going around the exterior of the house, replacing any of the damaged siding. If you can just scroll through those slides. Repair any of the damaged sashes on the windows, which was that one. And then this just shows the most damage on that side right there where we'd be replacing siding. This is the back of the house looking at from on the property. And then the bottom right-hand picture is looking from the dumpster is that back property line. So that's the back of the house looking from the dumpster, the back side. Go next. These are the 2 colors we're looking to do. The shutter color, the historic green, and then the house itself, simply white, same as the trim. No change on the foundation and no change to the roof. If you go to the next slide, there's some interior stuff we're going to be doing. This is existing site plan. This is just the interior existing. This is the second floor, third floor existing, and then this is the back porch. Back porch to be 11 feet by 12 foot with a wood burning fireplace and brick going up, and then a roof covering that. If you go to the next slide. That's the existing of the north elevation with an old brick stair going into a little back door. We would remove the brick staircase. If you go to the right, next slide. And then that would be the new proposed back. Keeping the door where it is, but adding a double door, all glass structure going into the dining room. Go next. That's just another view, a side view. So the stairwell would be small. It would be the deck that would stick out. It'd be open below with, again, the brick fireplace going up. And then in that area would just be covered with a TV mantle on the fireplace seen on that exterior of the fireplace. Next slide. This would be the door, steel door unit. It'd be made out of steel around the edges and then plain glass, plate glass in the middle of it. That would be going on to the balcony doors. Those two doors in the middle would be operable. The rest would be fixed. Next slide. Again, that's just showing the porch. It would have two areas. You'd have an upper and then going down to the lower to match where the door was. And then as far as electrical, just the fan and the exterior light. Next slide. That should be it. These are just the structural drawings for the interior. Next slide. Next slide. This is just a detail of the door. This would be a detail of the railing. We would also be proposing in this application to put railing around the front of the building that doesn't have it. I know it is high enough where code would dictate that we would have it. So we would go back with these new newel posts and then the top cap to match the picture. Next slide. And that is it. You're just going through the structurals at this point.
Thank you. Board members, are there any questions of George?
Yeah, when I first looked at that, I was confused where you were proposing the turn balusters, but you're saying the front porch?
We would want those on the front porch. That was on there on the application as well. Right now, there's no balusters on it. The owners do have young kids, so they would want to put the balusters on the front porch.
Okay.
Right here.
Do we have a front porch or a front elevation at all? With and without?
If we can look at one with the pictures, I do not have one with it, but if you look at the pictures that were up at the front. The one that you had from the street view. Go back again. And one more. So right now there is no railing, but we would propose putting a railing on.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Question.
Bill, just a question. Why two sets of steps off this addition on the back?
Well, we wanted to match because the door height is different. That steps down in the interior of the house. So we wouldn't want to change where that door is because it steps down. And then the existing proposed level, we're not changing. So we wanted to leave the door as is and leave the layout in the inside of the building as is. So we needed to drop down just to match that level because in the inside, it goes down to a powder room.
There's another set of steps to the other side.
Yeah, so we have a set of stairs going straight up to the main area, and then we had a set down just to tie in the old porch.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Kim, may we go back to a quick peek at that old photo, the black and white photo from
I just have one question of the applicant, if I may.
Yeah.
Sure.
What is the distance from the porch floor to the ground?
Porch floor to the ground is 6'11" from the top of the decking, which would be the exact floor height of the interior of the building.
From here to here? This one, the front.
Oh, on the front is same thing. It would be 5'5" depending on the grade for the front porch.
I think that may be bermed up, but I think what Kim is probably getting to is the question of whether you're over 30 inches, which is the safe height,
For
to
sure.
not have a handrail.
For sure, over 30 inches.
Anyone else? So we could move on to public comment if there is any.
Yes, we have Anna Catherine Carroll. Anna Catherine, you can unmute yourself when you're ready to speak.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society is not supportive of the deck addition as currently proposed, given its significant impact on the rear elevation. While we are not opposed to reconfiguration of the non-original rear stair or a program to facilitate outdoor living space, the large sealed door and window unit proposed is inconsistent with the existing fenestration pattern and affects an unnecessarily large area of the rear elevation. Additionally, we are concerned with the highly prominent location of the chimney at the edge of the deck. We feel further study is needed to more sensitively locate and scale the chimney for reduced visibility. Also, the current form of the chimney with the metal top diffuser is suburban, and the design should better relate to the character of the primary building and district. Thank you.
Is that our only Zoom? I have one letter.
We have April Wood.
Oh, sorry, April. So we'll let April go ahead, and then I'll read the one letter that we have here.
This is April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. Can you hear me?
Ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. HCF has reviewed the request for modifications to the rear, including the installation of a deck with shed roof, double glass doors, chimneys, and stairs. We are opposed to these requests. The Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation state the following. New additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with the massing scale, size, and architectural features to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environment. The proposed alterations do not conform to the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. The double glass doors with the glass surround will result in unnecessary removal of historic materials. The design of the rear deck with the exterior chimney are not compatible with the massing, size, scale, or architectural features of this historic house. We do not believe that the proposed alterations respect the historic character of this 1920s house, and we recommend denial of this request. Additionally, we would need more information about the front porch railing that's proposed before we can support this request. Thank you.
Thank you, April. And then I'm going to read a letter from Phyllis Ewing at 182. No, well, sorry, I don't know her address actually, but it's pertaining to 182 Trad.
She's at 4 Ashley.
Okay, at 4 Ashley. Phyllis Ewing states, I am the neighbor directly to the north of this property. The plan as submitted does not enhance the dwelling and needs much tweaking. I'm not against an opening with French doors and some sort of deck, but feel that the current plan is inadequate. The opening for the new French doors with side lights overwhelms the north facade. The steel doors and windows are inappropriate for this house. The deck will be visible from the street. What I remember the BAR standards, The presence of shrubbery must be discounted in determining whether there is visibility from the street. Further, it is represented as being 6 feet 11 inches above grade with a ceiling of 17 feet 2 inches above grade and a roof that appears to attach to the house 3 feet plus or minus above the ceiling, referencing drawing number A 3.1. Proposed roof extends another 2 feet to the east and to the west. This is a large visible deck. The proposed chimney is more appropriate for a suburban house than the historic district. Double staircase on the back would be fine at a beach house. The materials do not relate to the foundation, and the design does nothing to unify or conceal the disparate elements under the stairs. This is a lost opportunity. Thank you for your consideration. And again, that's from Phyllis Ewing at 4 Ashley. And I believe that would be the last of our public comment. And so if the applicant would like to respond or clarify anything about the public comments.
No, you're good. I will take their notes and relate back to the owner.
Okay. Thank you. And we then will move on to board discussion.
Should we do staff comments?
This is Bill. Very quickly, Kim, could you go to the, is there a site plan? I'm sorry, I missed it if there was. Can you go to that?
Yeah, and I inadvertently missed the staff comments trying to juggle screens. So I'll ask Kim to go through the staff comments, and then George, since I skipped ahead, I'll certainly give you the opportunity to comment or question the staff comments after those are read before the board deliberates. I got out of order there.
Great. And then Bill, yes, I will look at the site plan. Just a couple comments. The proposal seems overwhelming and very suburban in nature, with the shed roof connecting to a stunted chimney and a large deck. The railings do not respect the house and should be simplified. The openings should be a more modest single entry door without additional glazing. Staff's recommending denial for general architectural direction with staff comments noted.
George, do you have any questions about staff comments?
Not necessarily. It's basically saying it's large in mass. But a deck in the back is not out of the question. It's just how they do it. And it looks like you're not wanting to entries off of that deck, or is it just kind of how we design it?
So now we can have board deliberation.
Sorry, was that a question?
Yeah, are you gonna veto having two accesses on that porch altogether, or is it purely based on the design at this point?
That would be for the board to decide.
Yeah, we're gonna be discussing that. I guess we'll come to a conclusion. This is Bill. I'll go ahead and start if that's all right.
Yep.
I think probably I have I believe this same opinion as staff and the preservation groups, and I guess what I'm wondering is, in seeing this, what I really would think might be a more appropriate solution would be a lighter touch to the house, potentially a hyphenated type connection. So maybe a single door connection out onto a porch that has more of a detached type effect to it, reading obviously as a separate mass. And potentially within that height, maybe one stair, potentially the one that captures this door at mid-level, might be able to be incorporated into that hyphenated element. So a much lighter touch to the existing historic fabric instead of this long sort of shed roof that really would just engage at a finer point. And also I do definitely agree with I believe the Preservation Society's comments about the chimney and chimney detailing. The exposure of the spark arrestor really shouldn't be in play. So I do believe that a porch addition could be done if it is definitely hyphenated and differentiated from the main structure and as light of a touch to the historic fabric as possible. And then my only real comment to the railing in the front would be, I'd like to see if there's any way at all to investigate potentially maybe some sort of a retained grade scenario or something to eliminate the requirement of a railing. And I guess historically, because of the fact it's grandfathered, what it is, I don't know that necessarily a railing is required, but I understand potentially the owner's need for a feeling of security in that area, but would wonder potentially maybe some sort of a, if appropriate, some sort of a retained grade might be able to alleviate that issue of a railing, simply because the materials that are currently available would obviously need to be vetted pretty hard. And one other final comment would be, I would hope that any stairs or railing details at the rear, if they're provided for the porch addition area, might be of a lighter appearance of material, potentially maybe iron or something like that. It appears pretty heavy with all this wood sort of conglomeration that's going on back here. Thank you.
I honestly don't have anything to add to all that.
I'm in agreement with the comments by the preservation societies and staff and other board members. I also want to express my concern about the railings on the front. I understand the need, if that is a fall hazard, to deal with that some way, but I think that requires a lot of attention and some very careful thinking. The addition of a heavy railing across that porch would dramatically change the street appearance of that house. And I think that some other method to deal with it, or something very sensitive and reversible, would be a better approach.
So I will task someone with meshing all that into a motion.
I have a question for Kim. We're addressing the front railing in this too. I don't, it's not in staff recommendations.
Yes, I wasn't aware that that was part of the scope. Yeah, we would definitely need to look at that. I'm interested to see if there's any ghosting, or there ever was a railing there. Sensitive approach would be necessary.
I will make an attempt at a motion then. Denial of the rear deck for general architectural direction, and deferral of the front railing for their study, and with staff comments noted.
Fillmore has made a motion.
I'll second. This is Bill.
Seconded by Bill. Kim and Linda, are you good on the details of that motion?
Yes.
Okay. So I will now call the roll. Fillmore? I think he's in favor. Because
in favor.
All right. Bill?
Yay, in favor.
Lindsay?
Yay, in favor.
Julia?
In favor.
Chair votes yay in favor with the group for 5-0, motion carries. And next up will be 44 Legree Street.
44 Legree Street's requesting final approval for new vehicular iron gate and hardscaping. It's a category 3 in the Charlestown neighborhood circa 1865 and in the old and historic district. Here's an aerial image just for a little context. This section of Legree between Trad and Broad Street on the east side. Here's some existing site conditions. This is looking south. Looking north on Legree Street. And another south. Skateboarder.
That's great.
1973 survey card. 1902 and 1944 Sanborn maps. Show a pretty similar building. And if the applicant can take it from here, you can unmute yourself when you're ready to speak. There we go. Candace, you with us?
Yes, I am. Sorry, I was having some difficulties. Good evening, everyone. My name is Candace Young. I am a landscape designer at Abel's Landscapes, and we are just evaluating the owners, James and Laura.
Candace, can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, can you guys not hear me? Can you guys hear me well?
It's better.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have to just talk a little louder. Sorry. Good evening. I am here presenting for Laura and James Barnhart at their house on 44 Legree. They are just getting we're doing new landscaping, and they wanted a new iron gate to match, historical context, as well as redoing their existing drive in similar materials of brick and tabby concrete. If you go to page 9, that'll have the elevation of the gate that we're proposing. So there, number 2, the decorative iron gate. It's 7 feet tall and in character with the style of the area. The homeowners specifically did not want to do any brick or larger columns. They've seen their neighbors really struggle with pulling into their drive. So working with our ironsmith, we have these 6-inch metal post columns. The gate will be automatic gate with an opener that there would either be a clicker in their car or a keypad within the property. And if you go to page 5, I can show you the layout of where those would be the materials that we'd be using for the drive. So our drainage plan, and as you can see, the drive will be where you see those diamond scores will be the tabby concrete with the Savannah gray brick border, and just right there at the entry of the drive will be the gate. And they are also proposing we'll do a brick apron with a header course and herringbone pattern. That's about all I have.
Are there any questions of the applicant?
I don't have any.
Oh, sorry. This is Julia. I was going to ask, could you just kind of clarify the inspiration for the gate design?
Just taking pictures of between me and the homeowner. She shared photos with me of gates in the area that she liked, and then we kind of corresponded back and forth with that kind of style, and landed on the details of having those larger circles in the middle, making sure the bottom part was fully screened so that a dog could not get through it. And then just adding the details and the finials just in character with the style.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have any public comment? Kim?
We do. We have Anna Catherine Carroll.
Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society would encourage continued study of the proposed ironwork design on the driveway gate based on contextual examples. The ornate scrollwork proposed is not typical of nearby iron gate examples, and we feel further study of historic gates along this particular section of the Legree streetscape should be conducted to inform the design. Thank you.
And that's all we have.
Staff comments?
Yes, we have several. The immediate context of the street is simple iron picket gates on brick or stucco coping walls. The proposed gates are massive, and the weight of each leaf will likely require a welded steel tube frame to support it, which will alter the aesthetic. Redesigning the proposal to be more in keeping with the surrounding context with more traditional, redesign the proposal to be more in keeping with the surrounding context with more traditional proportions. And finally, future submittals should include a street elevation. Staff's recommending denial for general architectural direction. Staff comments noted. Thank you.
Does the applicant have any questions or clarification?
That's okay. I'll go back to the drawing board.
So we will have board deliberation now.
I think, I don't believe, it doesn't sound like anyone has any issue with the hardscape proposed. I think it looks nice and appropriate. I do agree that the gates could probably use a little more study and maybe just a little simplification, or somehow they just seem really heavy and overwrought, no pun intended. That's all I got.
Oh yeah, this is Bill. I agree. I agree with staff's comments. They're a little bit too hostile for this portion of the street. It looks like something that might have been a little further down the street, maybe a contextual pull from below trad somewhere. But I think that staff's comments were appropriate for this application.
I have nothing to add. I agree with staff.
All right, I will just make a motion for something for, oh, and I do appreciate staff's comment about having a street elevation. I think it'd be helpful to see that gate in scale compared to the house. So I think we're saying, we can say approval of the hardscape proposed and denial of the gate design for general architectural direction, and staff comments noted.
Okay.
Is there a second to Julia's motion?
I'll second.
I'll call the roll after Julia's made the motion and Fillmore has seconded. Julia?
Yay in favor.
Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
Lindsay?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yay in favor.
Okay. The chair votes with the majority, so 5-0, the motion carries.
Julia, may I reread that to make sure I have the
Sure.
approval of hardscape as proposed and denial of the gate for general architectural direction in comment 7?
No, and comments noted. All of your comments, all staff comments.
So if that clarification is complete. We will move on to agenda item 10, 4347 Broad Street.
I'm going to put Julia on hold. She will recuse. Okay, agenda item number 10 is 43 to 47 Broad Street. Requesting conceptual approval of new louvered screening at roof to conceal existing mechanical system. Buildings of category 2 in the Charlestown neighborhood circa 1855 and in the old and historic district. Here's an aerial image to orient you at the corner of Broad and Church. And just front elevation, beautiful building. And looking southeast, looking north, and you can see where this railing will be going. This is on Church Street. 1973 survey card and a picture of the famous mural, Hat Man. The mural that started it all. This is a Sanborn map from 1884 and 1902. And if Aaron would like to take it from here, Aaron, you can unmute yourself when you're ready to speak.
You'll hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right. Good evening. This is Erin Lanier with Julia Martin Architects here tonight to request conceptual approval for a new louvered screen at the rear roof line of 43 Broad, better known as the Hat Man building. You'll go ahead. Next slide, please. This is a 3-story mixed-use building constructed in 1855, located at the southeast corner of Broad and Church. And as you can see from this aerial view here, the building has a low slope roof that's surrounded on 3 sides by a cast iron clad parapet, but the rear roof line, which faces south towards Elliott Street, is completely open, and that's where we'd like to install a louvered screen. Similar to 40 Broad, which you reviewed several months ago, the 3rd floor of this building is a substantial single-family residence. The owner is interested in the possibility of accessing that roof in the future. So this screening could serve as a guardrail in that instance, but will also hide the existing mechanical equipment that is up there now and provide protection to anyone servicing that equipment. The primary view of the rear elevation of this building is through a parking lot on Elliott Street, which you can see here in the bottom left-hand image. Then the photo on the right-hand side is an adjacent parcel on Elliott Street, which has a nice example of the kind of screening we're intending. We're proposing a high-quality wood like sapele with traditional louvers painted to match the building's cornice. And then the center image is a view of the rear of 29 Broad, which I just show as a precedent because it is also a residence, as is becoming increasingly common in this stretch of Broad, and they have hidden a small terrace behind the balustrade at the roof level. Unlike what was proposed at 40 Broad, we have indicated that any sort of access at 43 would have to be low profile, similar to the operable skylight they have here at 29 and completely hidden from view from any public right-of-way. Next slide, please. This is our existing and proposed roof plan, and we have indicated the limits of where a roof terrace could occur in order to prevent any visibility, but we're proposing that this screening extend the full length of the rear roof line and be held back about 2 feet from the edge of the roof at the south side for the cleanest appearance from Elliott Street. Next slide. Aside from the view from Elliott, the only other location where the screening would be visible is here on Church Street, as Kim pointed out, and we're suggesting that it terminate behind the existing parapet return as indicated in the existing and proposed 3D images shown here. We've also included a building section, which just shows the limits of any future roof terrace and where the guardrail would occur in relation to the edge. Next slide. I'll end with our 3D views from Elliott Street. As we all know, this is sort of the back of house for the buildings fronting on Broad, but we think this louvered screening helps simplify this elevation, hides the mechanical, and would allow for reasonable use of the roof in a very subtle, non-intrusive way. That's all I have, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, if nobody's going to ask a question, I guess I'll ask. Aaron, how are you going to anchor this screen system to the roof?
You know, we haven't gotten into that level of detail yet, but our goal would be that it not be something that's going to have to be anchored to any historic elements of the building. We would want it to be freestanding and fully reversible, of course.
Thank you.
In light of Bill's question, Aaron, I have a quick question. Is the current roof PVC or TPO?
Yeah, it's just like a membrane roof.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. And do we have anyone signed up for public comment, Kim?
April Wood will be speaking from Historic Charleston Foundation.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the application for the new louvered screening at the roof to conceal the existing mechanical system. We do not object to the screening of the existing mechanical systems, but as a general policy, we are opposed to visible roof alterations to accommodate roof decks in the core of the historic district. We suggest that the BAR consider this as a decision is made for this application. Thank you.
Thank you. And if that was the only Zoom comment, we have a couple of letters that I will read in. And first off, we have a letter dated January 11 from 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like there are 10 signatures on the letter. As proud members and neighbors of the greater Broad Street community, we enthusiastically support the BAR submittal for 43 Broad Street, which will come before BAR on January 14th, 2021. Proposed roof screening of the south elevation of 43 Broad Street is attractive in its design and importantly will shield from view existing rooftop equipment, thus significantly improving the current conditions. We therefore strongly encourage the board to act favorably in support of this application and appreciate the consideration. It is signed by Frederick Simon at 103 Church, Patty Florsheimer at 106 Church, Jeffrey Roberts at 42 Broad, Timothy Weldon at 47 Broad, Mike Schuler at 40 Broad, Susie Martin at 110 Church, Trudy Wagner at 106 Church, Charles Constant at 29 Broad, Brenda No at 45 Broad, and Angela Drake at 43 Broad. So that is the first letter we have. We have a second note from Chuck Sullivan, from Charles Sullivan. As a nearby resident who works on Exchange Street and lives on Church Street, I'm in favor of the proposed roof screening of the south elevation of 43 Broad Street. I feel screening the view of the existing roof equipment is a positive addition to the building and neighboring structures. Again, that's from Chuck Sullivan, who works at 19 Exchange and lives at 35 Church. So next we would have staff comments.
Thank you. In general, screening is appropriate and often requested to screen mechanical units. But the utmost care should be taken on this Category 2 building to ensure that it is in the least visible locations. Staff's recommending conceptual approval with final review by staff.
Aaron, do you have any questions or feedback about the public comment?
I don't, other than just to say, you know, we understand Historic Charleston Foundation's policy. We maintain that as these buildings become residential, that it seems reasonable to us that people have some outdoor space. And so we're trying to do that as sensibly as possible, given the context.
So on to board discussion.
This is Bill. I have one question of staff regarding your comment number 2 to utmost care should be taken on this category 2 building to ensure that it is the least visible location. Was that in response to where the location is depicted, or I'm just trying to understand that comment?
Yeah, so I asked the applicant what would happen if it were to shift back a foot or two further off of the side. And she responded that, you know, with the roof sloping, it would have to be taller in order to conceal the mechanical unit, in which case it would probably be more visible. So, you know, there's a sweet spot there. And I just want to make sure we hit it. Follow.
So I guess I'm trying to understand that though, because as the sight line is perceived of the mechanical equipment, I'm trying to understand that particular comment of it having to be taller if it's further removed.
Because the roof slopes upward.
I mean, was a sightline study presented to staff, I guess is the question.
Can I respond?
Yes.
Yeah, Aaron, would you like to reply to that?
Yes, please. We are trying to achieve what is necessary to not only screen the equipment, but keep the screening below the parapet, obviously, and the roof slopes up significantly as you move towards Broad Street. So we're just trying to, you know, give some relief to the edge, maintain 36 inches, and be able to have nothing poking up and visible from any portion on Broad or Church other than what we're showing you.
Okay, so therein lies the question. So is this the intent of this to provide the 36-inch requirement for railing as if it were a deck type system? Is that
correct? Yes. Yes.
It's more of a railing than a screen? Is that fair?
I mean, the intent is that it would screen the equipment. It would also serve as a safety railing for anybody up there working on the roof. And then, yes, if someone were to install a roof deck, we would expect that they would need to have 36 inches above the walking surface to be able to be up there safely.
Well, I guess, and I'll just follow up one more question of staff. Do you believe in the context of your comment number 2 that this is the appropriate location? That was a question for you, Kim.
Yeah. I do. So the one unit is moving. You can see where that is. But, you know, my only other thought would be that, you know, that portion that comes to Church Street, from Church Street to the back of that moved unit, maybe that could slide over more. That's where my comment number 2 comes in, to make sure that all avenues have been explored.
So with that comment, I'm just trying to make sure that we're getting into proper address of that comment, because if we make a recommendation with that comment, I want to make sure it's clear to us and to the applicant that you're saying that you still would like to see a study of the exact location of the screening, or in context of that comment. Is that correct? We're not approving it where it's proposed to be located. We're approving the presence of a screen, but you're asking for further study of the exact location of that screen. Is that correct?
I think a mock-up would be a good idea, if that's what you're suggesting.
I wasn't, but I think that would be a good idea too. And I'm not trying to, parse this thing to death, but I just want to make sure that staff's concerns are being addressed, and it appears that being a comment still leaves it open-ended. I'm thinking potentially maybe a mock-up would, if you believe a mock-up would answer that concern of comment number 2, then potentially the board could give some form of I don't know if it's a conditional approval or if it's I don't know quite how the motion would be worded, but I just want to make sure that to staff satisfaction of the address of comment number 2, how that could be best handled through the motion and through any other activity, be that a mock-up or whatever it is, sightline studies or whatever.
I mean, we'd be happy to work with staff as we develop the final details on the exact placement and do whatever mock-up is necessary to make sure that we get it in the right location.
Okay, so I guess then, and I'm not going to make it yet, but I'm just floating this out for the rest of the board members. I would believe then, if staff's saying that the presence of a screen wall is appropriate, it's just the location that needs to be further studied, then could we give a preliminary approval for the presence of a screen wall, but then have to either give staff final approval of the exact location of that wall? Is that appropriate? I'm asking staff if that's appropriate.
I think that would be appropriate. Bill, you see, I know that you're interested in this, so it could also be another on another agenda, further review of a mock-up.
Aaron, Fillmore here. I have a question on your A101 on the roof drawing. There's a condenser unit that's marked to be relocated.
Yes.
And is it going? Do you know where it's going to be relocated? I'm assuming its shown position is where it's not going to be in the final configuration. Is that correct?
I do not have an exact location for where it's going to be located as of now, so that would be something we would need to pinpoint. But
Yeah.
we would have it behind the screening. So, but yeah, that would need to be pinpointed, and we could determine that, work with staff.
Looking at the drawing, and clearly the area that in the future might be a terrace is to the east. And if that unit's relocated, there is one other piece of equipment on that west side of the I think I'm oriented, yeah, on the west side of the building. And I don't know the height of it, so it's difficult to determine how visible it is or what the effect of the screening would be. But it looks to me like if that defined area is for a future terrace, the screening all the way to the west side, all the way to Church Street might not be necessary visually. And if you pull that back, it might not be visible. It would still be visible from Elliott Street, but not necessarily from Church Street. I'm just thinking about, I think the end result of this is to get a deck with a 36-inch rail around it. And I'm just looking at options for for trying to make the impact of that as limited as possible, because it is a Category 2 building.
I guess I would just say our intention was that knowing Elliott Street is where you would get the most significant view, that it would be more attractive for the screen to go the full length than to sort of stop at some visually arbitrary point. But if the board would like us to reconsider that, we can.
I understand that. I'm not sure that that truncating it is from Elliott Street is the best idea either. I think it's difficult any way you look at it. But just looking at other possibilities here. I am sympathetic to Historic Charleston Foundation's concern about the continued push to put roof decks on historic buildings.
Fillmore, I guess I would ask you then, would you think potentially Kim's earlier point about a mock-up might be appropriate?
I think that might be appropriate. I mean, certainly, there's no interest in screening the chimneys, obviously, but the interest is certainly I understand the view from Elliott Street. Probably some of that equipment is visible and not terribly appealing. And so I'm not fundamentally opposed to the screening. I just want to be careful. So I think a mock-up is an excellent idea, and the board would probably want an opportunity to see it.
I agree, and I would state for the record, I'm not opposed to the idea of the screening either, but I do think a mock-up, would be warranted. So I guess the idea of approving screening right now, pending, not having a mock-up, I'm not trying to, make issue, but I do think it's important. It is a Category 2 building, and I think Historic Charleston's position is something that we do need to be sensitive to. So I guess what I'm getting around to asking the board and or staff here is that is it a deferral pending a mock-up and then review of such by the board? I'm just trying to make sure that we do this procedurally the right way.
I make a city recommendation. Coming from the discussion, we would recommend deferral with mock-up.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And I would make a motion to that effect if that's all right with the other board members.
And I have a quick question of either staff or Aaron. And the other thing is it possible to have access to that roof?
I don't have the answer to that question.
I understand that. Okay.
I guess in light of the discussion we've had, and really what I'm trying to do is make sure that staff's comment number 2 is properly addressed. I'll make a motion for deferral with the requirement of a mock-up for board review.
So Bill has made a motion. Kim, I'm guessing you and Linda have that down.
Yes, got that.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Lindsay has seconded the motion, and we'll call the roll for a vote. Bill?
Yay in favor.
Lindsay?
Yay in favor.
Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
And the chair votes with the majority. So the motion carries at 4-0.
Thank you.
Ever motion to adjourn?
Yes, and I will consider that we are officially adjourned. And I just want to mention one thing after April and the other public members are, I'll let you, Kim, let us know when it's only the board.
Well,
We still have one attendee that is still.
I don't think there's anything that's going to be said that
Okay.
needs to be
No,
covered.
that's fine. He may still be on there tomorrow. You never know. It just it's on. I just wanted to let staff clarify. Lindsay, welcome, and I'm so sorry that you didn't get to do your job today.
So sorry I couldn't do it.
But I think the protocol will be that the beginning of our next meeting, we will have an agenda item to nominate a chair and vote on that, at which point, presuming your nomination carries, and I know it's going to be a tough fight, you would then take over leadership of that meeting.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then what I don't know is, I mean, I was previously voted vice chair, or somehow maybe I just wasn't at that meeting and was unanimously nominated. I don't know.
Railroaded.
Yeah, I didn't know if Kim, I don't know if that gets voted on again. If someone else wants to take the turn to be the vice chair, I would second their nomination.
Do an outstanding job, Glenn. Very happy with you in that.
Glenn, you're great, man. You're the guy. Come on.
Oh, you don't?
Yeah, what I don't know is how sickly Lindsay is.
Okay.
So, Lindsay, if you have lots of frequent ailments, let me
You
know.
look young and healthy. She'll be fine, Glenn.
I rarely miss work, so I think you're okay.
But I don't know what the protocol is for that. So I'll let Kim tell us today or later whether vice chair gets renominated, revoted at this time, or I just don't know. So
I'll have to figure that out.
Okay.
Mandy knows everything. I should read the ordinance.
And then finally, I guess the beans have been spilled that we have a new city architect coming on board. And I didn't know, do we know when we will have her participating, or is there a board member Zoom meet and greet with her? Do we know anything about that?
We don't know. I think she starts next Monday or next Wednesday.
Okay.
I'm not sure. We should do a board meet and greet.
Yeah, I think that would be great, just so that we, since we are not always coming in like we used to, I think it would be great just to, have a quick familiarization with her at whatever the appropriate time is.
Will she eventually join all of these meetings?
Not BAR small, only BAR large. You're stuck with me, Lindsay.
I like you, Kim. I was hoping you would say that.
I'm guessing, Kim, it's probably one of those things where, we clearly have you as our administrator. And then maybe, there are probably times where, let's say the mayor has a favor he's asking for or something. She may be there to chime in, kind of like Dennis would on occasion to throw
If there's
more weight.
something controversial, or if, I don't know, I'm not comfortable doing something.
Hey, I just found the hidden key to my office. Do you see it up on that beam? I was wondering what that was, and that's my hidden key to my office. It's a key, it's a keychain up over hidden on the beam. Yeah.
Good.
Cool. Well, thank you all.
I'm going to ask you guys. I don't know. Bill, what's the thumbs up for? Are you leaving?
I'm hungry. I'm ready to eat supper.
Oh, last thing, sorry. So with Alex gone, this was my first meeting without Alex, so I did everything. And I don't know if I'm gonna keep doing
Great.
everything because it's a lot.
Great job, Kim. You did great.
Sorry if there were little hiccups, but I think I'm gonna attempt to continue this so I don't need to, drag Linda into every meeting. We'll see how it goes.
And admittedly, my only thing for Lindsay, and I get Jay probably had a better way of doing this, but my getting lost was I have this little cheat sheet about who was supposed to speak, but I needed to note the letters in advance because I didn't print the letters. I had the letters back in Dropbox. And so had I hit print on that, frankly, it would have been smoother on my end because of the fact that I didn't have those in front of me.
This was actually really helpful watching you do it, Glenn. I actually cornered Jay for an hour the other day and, got his just how he literally sits down with the meetings. I did not know about the letter thing. He didn't go over that. So, I was happy for you to be the guinea pig on that one, but I got some good tips. And I was thinking on the vice chair, it'll probably be more important whoever is voted in. It sounds like it might be you, Glenn. How did you handle it when Jay needed to recuse himself? I don't imagine there will be a lot of it.
It wasn't very often, but it was just, Jay would say, I have a conflict and am turning the meeting over, or this item or these items, and then he would come back after that.
And you would handle it? Okay.
And that only happened when maybe he or someone from his firm had represented somebody. It was a pretty minimal involvement, but it did happen a couple times.
Okay.
So, and then finally, before Bill goes to eat,
I know Bill's hungry.
we didn't have anybody aggressive today. I mean, it can be difficult, I think, when you have people who either haven't presented before or who are just really trying to push something hard. You do, and Jay was good at this. I'm not good at it, but sometimes you do have to sort of interrupt and cut people off. Especially
I got
if
phrases written down.
So I'm not good at that. I'm not really forceful enough.
Well, Glenn, you say that, but I think actually this meeting had a really good business-like tone to it. I was actually very happy with the sort of tone of this meeting. I think it went really well. It felt very business-like to me.
I need to work on that. I'm too casual.
Well, you just ran this meeting and I said it was a really good one, Kim. Come on.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thanks everyone.
All right, and hey, Julia's not, I think Julia is online but not here, so I might just nominate her for that vice chair position.
Glenn.
Yes, sir.
Your voicemail is full.
I am aware, and there's a reason for that.
He does it on purpose.
On my comment. I tried to call you today. Your voicemail was full.
No, I need to clean it out, but there are a couple things on there that I need to dictate before I erase them.
Hi, Bill.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Good night. Thank you, Lindsay.